Thank you very much for coming to this lecture and giving me this opportunity to talk. 25 years ago, I was sitting at the opposite side as a very young journalist, and now I have this chance to talk to you from here, which is a great honor for me. Thank you. So I will talk today about Japanese media and their problems and challenges, which is a very broad theme. So I will focus on 3 challenges today. The first is the relation with the internet, which is a big issue for any journalism in the world. And secondly, I will talk about this sort of inward-looking, domestic-oriented Japanese journalism and how foreign news is covered in the Japanese journalism. And in conjunction with this, I will talk about this latest comfort women issue, which happened to Asahi Shimbun. And I had this survey on with the foreign articles and concluded that Mr. Abe is an agenda setter of the comfort women issue. So let me start with the conventional media and internet. Well, first of all, the level of public trust. And the level of public trust in the media has been very high in Japan, as maybe you all are aware of. In this country, newspaper journalists and TV broadcasters are more trusted than scholars or scientists. But nevertheless, just like their counterparts in any other developed countries, Japanese print media are not doing well. The total newspaper revenue has declined over the past 15 years, albeit not as steeply as in the United States and Europe. Advertising revenue, which accounts for roughly 1/3 of the total, has fallen off, particularly since the recent global recession. In comparison, the decline in circulation revenue, which accounts for almost 60% of the total, has been negligible. In 2013, circulation revenue was down about 10% from the 1997 peak. So this revenue structure is in contrast with the case in the United States, for example, where circulation revenue accounts for a modest 27% of total revenue, according to the latest survey. So the degree of the crisis is not as serious as the United States newspaper industry, but nevertheless, Japanese newspapers are in crisis, primarily because of the aging readership and diversification of media outlets that limit their advertising revenues. I must add at this point the peculiarities of the structure of the Japanese newspaper market, namely its strong circulation revenues thanks to the extensive home delivery network, which penetrates every corner of the nation. So you see these small shops in the corner of the street. That these are the delivery stations. They're independent delivery stations. And this network of home delivery is sustained. Excuse me. It's sustained by nearly 20,000 distributors. This system has created a nationwide home delivery network that accounts for a full 95% of Japanese newspapers sold. And personal and community relationships have been the key factors that determine subscriber loyalty. Many Japanese readers remain loyal to one newspaper or another simply because their family has always subscribed to that newspaper or because they happen to know the neighborhood distributor. In other words, Japanese newspapers largely incorporate features of a community paper. Some delivery stations, particularly in the populated rural areas, even offer services like renting wheelchairs or helping change light bulbs for the aged, or offering home visits to check on people living alone, reinforcing the newspaper's role as a community medium. This is the case even with papers that sell millions of copies nationwide. However, such communal trust among Japanese is being challenged. At the moment, aging readership is the biggest concern for the industry. If we see this graph, men below the age of 40 spend more time on the internet than on newspapers. It is expected that this trend will not change greatly as they get older. So in 50 years, the present-day teenagers are likely to stay with the internet and will not support the traditional print media community in Japan. And this chart shows clearly the discrepancies in trust in newspapers and in the internet as news media among different generations. More and more younger people regard the internet as an indispensable news source, whereas for older people, it's the other way around. Now, talking about the television programs, particularly those which are broadcast by NHK and the 5 Tokyo-based key networks, have been widely watched by people too. The average TV viewing hours of the Japanese people amounts to as much as 3 hours and 46 minutes. This compares with 3 hours in 1985. The increase, about 46 minutes, however, accounts for the growth in the viewing time of commercial television and not NHK. So NHK has been struggling to define itself as a national channel. A 2010 NHK survey found that roughly 60% of Japanese teenagers today have virtually no weekly contact with NHK. But the amount of time to watch NHK rose sharply with age. NHK has become a media service that is more oriented toward senior citizens. Therefore, there are grave concerns within the network that if this trend continues unchecked, eventually no one will be watching it at all. Recently, news values in Japan are said to have become domestic and inward-looking in the arena of Japanese media. In my opinion, this trend takes place exactly at the juncture of such declining reader and viewership on the one hand, and the efforts to redefine Japan and reinforce its nationalism in the face of slow economic growth in the past decades on the other. In post-war Japan, it surely has been the major newspapers and TV stations that gave the Japanese people a broad sense of community of what it is to be a Japanese in various ways. To some, it was a liberal creed of pacifism that dominated in the popular sentiment during the 60s and 70s. Others enjoyed the perception of Japan as #1 during the bubble economy of the 80s. And these images were created and augmented mostly by the Japanese corporate media, which grew and expanded in every facet of our lives. However, in the face of proliferation of the internet as well as globalization, conventional media, such as newspapers and broadcasting, which are defined according to the national boundaries, are forced to redefine their role as information media. Many young people turn their back to these conventional media and prefer the internet that supports their much diversified and individual lives and identities. But more recently, the government, or the Abe administration, has actively tried to take over the role of defining such collective national narratives. Indeed, the most distinctive part of the second Abe administration is its power and willingness to be an agenda setter of the nation. Starting with the term Abenomics, the administration put forth a variety of agendas and concepts such as proactive pacifism, or creating a society in which all women shine. I like this very much. And collective self-defense, state secrets law in the past years. And Japanese media, most of the Japanese media, rather uncritically followed these steps to redefine their role as media for the national community. In addition, Mr. Abe raised questions on long disputed issues that were raised by the liberals, such as the constitution, nuclear energy, or comfort women. The Abe administration does this strategically to integrate younger generations and even women, particularly with the help of new digital information tools such as Twitter and Facebook. It may be the first administration in Japan to use digital outlets exhaustively for its politics. Mr. Abe has been quite active in articulating his personal views in his Facebook, and more often than not, they became headlines. Now I turn to the look at the foreign news. While Japanese media have been quite enthusiastic about reporting such government policies and interesting details, they are not doing well in reporting foreign affairs. Our international research on national flagship TV news programs show that the number of foreign news items, as well as the proportion of the broadcasting time on foreign news, is comparatively low. If you see this chart, NHK, which is written as PBS in Japan, is doing remarkably badly as a public service broadcasting channel in reporting foreign and international news. So in Western Europe conception, PBS is the medium that would report foreign news because it's costly and it's too serious and so on. So you don't have to, but as PBS you don't have to really be careful about rating and so on. But for example, in Japan, it's the other way around. The commercial broadcasting report more foreign news than PBS. And this is also true if you see the South Korea. South Korea, they have they report quite much of the foreign news, and also as an Asian PBS, they are reluctant to report foreign news if you compare with private commercial channels. So the notion of PBS is quite different in Asian regions. That's what we found out. This is also, the results are also same if you see the amount of the international and foreign news on TV here in Japan too, and also Korea. And you see Norway, UK, they have the PBS are stronger in reporting foreign and international news. So these results presumably come from differences in understanding of the normative role of mass media. In Japan, many people, including intellectuals, see one important normative role of mass media as serving the national interest and the good for society rather than just providing information freely. And this tendency impacts the digital news as well. Sorry, this is very hard to see, but I will explain to you this. We also surveyed popular website headlines news in non-consecutive 3 weeks and found out that Japanese website news lacks the variety in the countries they cover. So websites in other nations had more news with a variety of origins. So here, the websites in Japan, they mostly report on China, South Korea, and that time South Africa because of the World Cup. And that's almost about all what they carried in the headlines. Whereas in the other nations, they have more varieties of origins in the news. And we also found out that among 11 nations we surveyed, the Japanese public showed relatively low interest in international affairs. This may be somewhat correlated to the reluctant attitude of covering foreign news on the part of the Japanese media. So we see Japan and Colombia are not doing well in the interest of international and domestic international news. Well, I will then go straight to the comfort women issue, which is more actual. Last October, I was appointed as a member of the Independent External Committee for the Asahi Shimbun and reviewed their past comfort women coverage. This was really a hard work, personally, but I will tell you about our reports. Mr. Abe and his followers had repeatedly reproached Asahi for failing to retract the wartime testimonies of Mr. Yoshida Seiji, who served as a labor official during the Asia-Pacific War. And his statement turned out to be fictitious in later years. So that's the start of the story. And against such background of how the whole incident started, it was Mr. Abe who set the agenda and caused, albeit indirectly, the Asahi management to deal with the issue. The management, as I interviewed them, was made to fear that unless it reviewed its past reports on the comfort women issue, it would not be able to live up to their reputation as a quality paper. So this feature, all these pages, by the Asahi on August 5th and 6th, was in fact planned not as a part of journalism, but as a part of a, quote, crisis management on the part of the board member of Asahi. And it turned out to be a remarkable success on the side of Mr. Abe and a dreadful mistake on the side of Asahi, which maybe we all know. When Asahi retracted the article that contained quotes by Yoshida Seiji, its rival, Yomiuri, aggressively campaigned against the paper and claimed its correctness by contrasting its own with those of Asahi. The truth was, however, that Yomiuri also covered Yoshida, and it didn't retract its own articles. And Yomiuri has been the most reluctant paper to report on the comfort women issue throughout these years. But not only Yomiuri, but also the liberal left-leaning Mainichi followed this move and attacked Asahi in order to gain back its lost circulation, as well as its influence on society as a purveyor of the zeitgeist of the nation. The whole affair was a battle over hegemony among Japanese national media. And the easiest and simplest way to take hegemony in the current popular sentiment is to be in line with mainstream views. And I measured the amount of the articles in each paper. And since 2009, the conservative Sankei has caught up with the liberal Asahi in terms of the number of articles on comfort women published. So we see a clear trend from this table that Asahi reporters have been discouraged to write about the comfort women issue since 1990. So at first, during the 90s, they are encouraged and they thought that it should be covered as a national news, but lately they've been quite hesitant to pick up this issue. And I was also asked by the Asahi management to review the formation of the international public opinion regarding comfort women issue as well. And I examined almost 600 articles of the coverage of comfort women in France, Germany, UK, and US. And this is a chart of fluctuation of the amount. Interestingly, the number of articles in these investigated regions fluctuated in a similar way. And it was quite remarkable to see how influential Mr. Abe has been on this issue recently. My quantitative analysis shows clearly that he has been the main agenda setter in recent discussions on comfort women. The volume increased both during the periods of the first and second Abe administration. And these are the names of politicians and other figures that were frequently quoted in comfort women coverage. So the top is Abe Shinzo, 96, and next comes Hashimoto Toru, and then comes Maruyama and so on. Interestingly, Momii of NHK is also on the list too. And who was mentioned? And Abe was the most mentioned politician or most mentioned person throughout. So my conclusion to this report was that it was neither Yoshida Seiji or Asahi who discredited Japan in the eyes of the world, but it was Mr. Abe and his colleagues and his followers who contributed to spreading the negative image of Japan. His visit to Yasukuni, since Yasukuni Shrine, together with a move to review Japan's war apology, Kono Danwa, was nothing but offensive and was seen as an offensive and reckless provocation from the perspective of countries that suffered most under Japanese imperialism. But this, at the same time, suggests that Mr. Abe is the key for resolving this entangled relationship with neighboring countries. If he makes strenuous efforts to find an alternative path, perhaps in conjunction with his initiative to make a society with shining women, as well as the 70th anniversary year since the end of the World War II, it would make an extraordinary positive impact on international public opinion. So that's all. Thank you very much.